I guess I'll get started then. Hello, thank you all for coming. This is our first Chat Chew session. I'm a little excited about it, so I'm working hard on it. So just thinking about today, communication, so that can either build that connection or kind of break it. So thinking about defensiveness and dialogue and how we can kind of keep our conversations productive. So this session is inspired by and pulls from Sharon Ellison's Taking the War Out of Our Words, but really focusing on tips and techniques for how to use that information and just tips and tricks in your day-to-day work here. So before we dive deeper, I just want to take some time to meet our expert. So Sharon Ellison is a renowned author, speaker, communication expert, right? So she's known for transforming the ways that we talk and approach conversations. As the author of Taking the War Out of Our Words, she's dedicated her career to helping individuals kind of communicate with clarity and compassion, and really just finding that confidence so that we can engage in those awful conflict-ridden conversations without like feeling like we have nothing to come to it with. So thinking a little bit about us here in the college and how defensiveness comes up, right? We are at a lovely college where we have so many different people with different personalities and experiences, and it's really valuable for our students to kind of learn from all of these perspectives. It also means that conflict is inevitable, and we're all super smart here, very passionate, which means we're also really good at arguing sometimes, and really good at engaging in those kind of conversations, right? So when defensiveness shows up, typically it's because people are trying to protect ourselves, right? So we have this belief that this is how things should be done, and we want people to kind of understand that, right? So while we try to protect ourselves, a lot of times it just ends in shutting down conversations, kind of lowering confidence, making us doubt ourselves a little bit, and just kind of keeps us from really connecting with the people that we're talking to. So it really matters for us to think about defensiveness, because when we're not effectively communicating with each other, we're not able to support our students in the same ways, we're not able to support each other in the same ways. So thinking about how we can stay more collaboration focused as opposed to like engaging in these kind of power struggles that we might experience. So thinking about that and what defensiveness kind of looks like and feels like, right? So when we feel defensive again, it's just because we're trying to protect ourselves, right? We're putting up these walls so that someone can't make us feel some type of way about ourselves. So again, just ironically, because when we try to feel more safe, we end up feeling less safe, right? Less confident, less able to learn. So at work, that kind of just looks like us being less able to collaborate. So for Sharon Ellison, she kind of pulls out 6 different ways that we react defensively or can react defensively, right? So we have our traditional fight, flight, and then our avoiders who just don't even want to engage in the conflict when it comes up. So she associates these 6 different defensive reactions with different personality traits that we might associate with these things, right? So we have our defensive personality. So that's your traditional, like, I'm jumping, I'm escalating, I'm getting upset. That aggressive personality, which is just kind of that person that you feel like is always just a little abrasive. Passive personality, vindictive personality. So vindictive is more of that, you're trying to get someone to track themselves. You're trying to get them to like talk themselves into a corner. And then those last ones, which I'll move this down so we can show you it a little bit. We have kind of more codependence and passive aggressive. So either relying heavily off of other people and taking responsibility for the things that they're feeling, or we're passive aggressive where we might say we're fine with something and then 5 minutes later be like, I can't believe she said that, or like feel some difference about it. So either way, we are maybe saying something but feeling a different way without really sharing it. So like I said before, once we get into this really escalated place, a lot of times that results in a power struggle. So it's us and someone else kind of in this tug of war where if you're winning this conversation, I'm losing the conversation, and I cannot lose the conversation. And so we need to like keep going. And in a lot of ways that can end up feeling really addictive, right? If we win, we feel really good because I proved my point, right? I knew that I was right, and now you understand that I'm right. On the flip side of that, if we lose that, it's also an incentive to get back in it, where it's like, hey, I don't feel good, so I want to do this again so that maybe I can win this time. And it's kind of just this back and forth where we're just trying to gain control. And a lot of times, the more we engage in this, the further we get away from like a practical solution. So we're kind of just going back and forth without thinking of how do we resolve this. So instead of approaching these conversations like a battle or this power struggle, Ellison suggests 3 different tools, right? Questions, statements, and predictions. So these are all things that we use in our everyday life, but she argues that we use them incorrectly or use them in very self-serving ways at times. So I want to start with questions. So typically when we ask questions without intentionally thinking about it, we might slip our judgment into the questions. So we might see somebody during a meeting and kind of seeing them escalate, and we might say, don't you think you are overreacting to what she said? Which seems really logical to us if we see someone like with a really big reaction. But in a lot of ways, when we say that, we're kind of negating what they're feeling, right? To them, it might not feel like an overreaction. To them, it might feel like this is real to me, right? Even if they are completely overreacting, they might not feel that way. So instead of just saying, don't you think you're overreacting, there are different ways that we can go about talking to that person and asking them those questions. So non-defensive questions are kind of an opportunity for the other person to explain themselves. We want to get really clear on what is going on with you so that I can understand why you're having such a big reaction to this. If I don't understand what's going on with you, we can't get to a mutual solution. So a non-defensive question might be, can you help me understand what it was that she said that made you feel this way? So what went wrong? What made you react in this way? Instead of saying that the reaction doesn't make sense. First, try to understand how they got there. And with those questions, there's kind of 2 formats that we can go about it. So the content questions are more about the topic. So it's like your who, what, when, where, how, and why of kind of what's going on, right? So how did you feel about the decision she made? When that happened, how did you react? Kind of just trying to get really clear on the situation. On the other side, we have process questions. So that's what's happening between people. So this might be a situation where someone says like, I am fine, where it's like, you are maybe not as fine as you're saying that you're fine, if you're saying it like that, right? So it's kind of getting curious about like, hey, I understand that you're saying this, but I really feel like there's something else going on. So maybe we can get to what's actually going on so that we can move the conversation forward, right? Another thing to consider for these questions is what Ellison calls our verb elements. So these are our values, emotions, reasoning, and behavior. So these help us kind of dig a little bit deeper, right? If we're asking surface level questions, we might understand what is going on, but we might not understand why it's happening. So she argues that asking these verb questions, right, of understanding, like truly getting to the root of what someone believes, what they feel, what they think, will help us get more clarity on what is going on with that person. This approach is especially useful in kind of supervisory roles and also with students because it shows that you're curious about the person and not just trying to address the situation, right? I'm trying to learn about you. I'm trying to extend this connection. So it just kind of works a little bit better in those situations. So questions are really, really great for understanding and just getting that clarity. But sometimes we make statements that really escalate some people. So statements are another kind of format that she suggests that we look into and kind of evaluate how we use them. So sometimes when we make statements or just, state something, we take our experience and make it a universal experience. So it could be something as simple as like, it's raining outside, that's really gloomy, like it's so gross outside. Whereas I might really like the rain, and if you say like, it's so gross outside, I either have a choice to agree with you and not share how I actually feel, or I can disagree with you outright. And that already is kind of a weird situation to put someone in. We tend to do this especially when we're talking about someone else's behavior, right? So I have our defensive statement of, oh, you always procrastinate on major projects, right? Which is, really interesting, because when I think of that, right, when people say like, oh, you always do this, or you're forever doing this, you're always like that, right? That is like the best start to every single argument of like, you are always doing this, right? So they're like, not last week I was on top of it. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you were right. So when we state our opinion as a fact, we automatically put anyone that disagrees with us in an adversarial position. Another thing that we might do is we tend to use inclusive pronouns, like I'm doing, and saying, we do this, you do this, which might not be everyone's experience. So even if we truly believe what we say, it doesn't mean that someone else will share our perspective. So when we make non-defensive statements, we want to try to leave room for other people's experience. So we might incorporate I in it a lot more. So I feel stressed when I don't know when our project will be ready, as opposed to you're really procrastinating. That helps it keep it rooted in kind of our experience, because we are the only thing we can control. So it's just acknowledging where we're at and inviting the other person to kind of collaborate with us in that situation. So she gives us 4 formats that we can use for these statements, and these are all focused on kind of increasing that clarity. So we can address someone's overt message, so what you think they're actually saying. I found this to be really valuable in helping address any misunderstandings as they come up, because it helps eliminate my assumptions. So I think that you're saying this, can you tell me if that's correct? Just to get really clear on what someone means. That covert message, again, just goes towards what they might actually mean. So again, that's when someone is saying something, but maybe they're like slouched when they're saying it. So their body is telling you something than what they're actually saying. The third one is the possible cause / motive. I would highly caution using that one with anyone that you don't know, just because with people that we do know, we have so much data to pull from, right? We know a little bit about their personality. We know about the ways they react, the things that they like. And so we might have a better idea of, I think this is what's going on with you. When it's someone that we don't know, we might have a good idea, but that trust isn't there. So it's really hard to tell them like, I think this is happening with you, when they feel like you're a complete stranger. I don't know what you're talking about. And that last format is our own reaction. And I think this one is really valuable outside of the other 3, because again, we are the only person we can control. We can be honest about what's going on with us, and other people can choose to engage with that or not. So I feel concerned when I think it would be better if just being really honest about our own experience. Moving on to predictions, which is our last kind of tool. Thinking of predictions either as how we typically use them, as issuing a threat or offering rewards. So we have that defensive prediction of, if you don't like it around here, look for another job, which would be so awesome if we could say all the time, but then like nobody would stay at work because everything always comes up at work, right? So those don't really work, right? We're not helping the person come to a solution. So when we use these predictions non-defensively, all we're trying to do is get really clear for the other person about what we think will happen depending on their choices. That could either be what choices we're going to make depending on the choices they make, or it could be what we think will logically happen for them if they make a certain choice. So again, this is all of the goal of not engaging in a power struggle. So that non-defensive statement of prediction, if you continue to shout at me, I will hang up. If you stop shouting at me, I will try my best to help you, right? So just giving them that option. You're not saying, hey, you need to stop. You're saying, I'm going to give you the choice. You can continue this way, or you can make a different choice. And these are the choices I will make depending on the choice you make. And helping give them that agency also helps kind of diffuse that defensiveness, because it makes them feel like they are actively a part of that conversation. So with our predictions, we have 2 different formats for that. So there's limit setting prediction, which is very similar to the example before, where we say, if you do this, I will do this. If you do this, I will do that. So if you continue to put the project off, then I will have to put you on a performance improvement plan to track your progress. Logically, that's just what's going to happen for you. Challenge choice predictions are predicting the natural consequences for someone. So if the report isn't submitted on time, I think the committee will move forward without your input. It's just giving them all the information they need to make a decision. Now, this is all really great and all, but it's really difficult to do because I naturally want to either escalate with someone or like run away because why are we in such a stressful conflict? So when someone doesn't want to engage with you, if you're using all these tools and they still are just really escalated, right? We can ask neutral questions, right? Just trying to diffuse them. Do you want to know why I asked you? Do you want to know why I want to know what's going on with you? Or I won't be able to tell you what I think until I understand what you mean. So just kind of taking it out of the context that it's in and just say, hey, let's get on the same level here. If that doesn't work, just stop. You don't have to stay in a conversation where you feel like it's not productive, you're not being listened to, or if you feel like someone's just being rude to you. So just stop and make that prediction of, hey, if we can't engage in a very respectful conversation right now, I don't want to have this conversation right now. So you can walk away from it. You don't have to put up with that behavior. You should probably revisit it, especially if it's with a coworker or a student or anything like that, but you don't have to keep going when something's not working, right? One of my favorite quotes that she has in her book is, a closed mind doesn't listen, right? If someone is really, really upset, they're never going to hear what you want to, like what you are telling them, regardless of how you say it or how many times you say it or the different ways that you say it. So just stop and revisit when they can listen to you or you feel like you can communicate it more effectively. Now, for practicing non-defensiveness, this one is more thinking about ourselves, because a lot of times, I know for me personally, I might say something a certain way and not recognize that the way I said it might not have sounded so great for the person who's receiving it. So a good way to practice could be in a mirror, just kind of seeing your facial expressions. I know for me, my face tells on me a lot of times. So like if someone says something and I feel some type of way about it, my face might express my opinion before I have the opportunity to. So a good way to do that is just seeing in the mirror, what does your face do when people say things? Another thing is a tape recorder, so listen to the tone of your voice. So like, are you someone that puts that emphasis on, you always do this? Is that something that's kind of routine in your patterns? My kind of favorite ones are analyzing a past argument. So thinking about maybe a situation you had with a coworker, a student, or maybe it's like last year's Thanksgiving, that went bad, like what could I have said differently, right? So just analyzing past conversations you had and thinking about the different decisions you could have made or the different comments you could have made, just in a non-defensive way to diffuse it. So thinking about a quick practice scenario that might come up for us in this college. So scenario, a colleague says this process is ridiculous, right? So this is our defensive response. My immediate reaction might be, well, maybe you're ridiculous. Or like, great idea, let's just do everything your way since you know absolutely everything, we'll do that. Or like the classic, like, we've always done it this way, so like, sorry, deal with it, right? Which again, might feel really good in the moment to say, but like doesn't help the person who feels like this process is like really frustrating. So we can react a little bit differently to that, right? So we can use the question, statements, and predictions. So again, I think this process is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, cool. Can you tell me what part feels confusing to you? What is not making sense to you? What part of it feels ridiculous to you? If they don't really engage with that, we can say a statement. When I feel discouraged when the process is dismissed without specifics, like I would love to explain it to you, I would love to help you, I would love to get on the same page, but I can't do that if I don't know what you're thinking. So kind of just explaining to them again, I would like to get on the same page, but we're not there right now. And that prediction, if you can't discuss calmly, I'll step back and we'll revisit later. Again, you don't have to stay in that conversation with someone who is escalated. So just kind of wrapping it up in our little takeaways from today. Defensiveness closes dialogue. So even though we're trying to protect ourselves, a lot of times it just separates us from the other person, and we can't really engage in a productive way. Non-defensive communication, the goal is opening that trust. It's gaining more clarity. It's learning. So we have our tools, our questions, statements, and predictions. Power struggles can feel addictive, but ultimately don't resolve conflict, unfortunately. And one non-defensive move can shift an entire conversation. So before I just jump into the questions, something I also really want to acknowledge is that this is something that can be incredibly hard to do, right? No one was born with all the skills to communicate in productive ways. These are kind of like muscles that we need to practice and flex, right? We are trying to change. If you do find yourself reacting defensively, trying to change immediate reactions to things, and that's something that's really difficult to do. So sometimes like the best thing you can do is just take a pause. Don't react immediately, just take a second and kind of reflect and think. And that in itself is a win, right? You're pausing this automatic routine that you're used to. So even just kind of the smallest steps with it really do, I think, make a difference and help you get to that place where you're communicating more effectively. So that is the end of our content. So I will stop recording.